Introduction. First things first, let me talk to you about why it's worth investing your valuable time from today to be proactive about building your network of personal and professional contacts. It's my view, based on lecturing for decades on this topic, that your life and your career will be transformed if you do what I recommend in this audiobook. Let me share a true story. In early 2023, I was working in Budapest, Hungary. After facilitating and emceeing a highly complex medical conference about spinal tumours and infection control, I was having dinner with a young neurosurgeon from Cameroon in Africa, who now worked at a specialist clinic in Switzerland. Like many medical professionals, he was a quiet, intelligent and reflective type of guy, a classic introvert. He explained that he barely knew anyone else at the conference and found it a little intimidating to strike up conversations with new people. Quiet introverts in particular really struggle walking into any room full of strangers, and if that describes you, I'll share some tips specifically for you later. Anyway, back to my story. The person responsible for organising the logistics for the event, who was sitting between us, chimed in enthusiastically with, "If you don't know anyone yet, you really need to meet, greet and prosper." This made me smile. I said to her, "So, Valentini, you must have checked me out beforehand." She looked at me blankly. "Sorry, I don't know what you mean," she said. I said, meet, greet and prosper." She still didn't know what I was talking about. I then added, "Why did you specifically say meet, greet and prosper?" Her eyes then lit up. She said, "Oh, that was the title of a lecture I attended about 10 years ago in Antalya, Turkey. It changed my life. I've shared what I learned in that lecture with all my team ever since. It really changed my life." "What do you remember from that lecture?" I asked. She instantly reeled off so many points and tips she'd learned from that lecture, which really impressed me. I mean, how many times have we listened to presentations, even really enjoyable ones, but have been unable to recall what was said just a few days or weeks later? To be able to recall so much after nearly 10 years was pretty cool. What she learned back then is included in this audiobook because I looked into her eyes and said, "That's wonderful to hear, but it's a shame you don't remember it was me who delivered that lecture, and it's the title of my book." She was stunned and then went on to tell me and the neurosurgeon again and again how much that one-hour lecture changed her life and her events business. A little later, after we'd all finished dinner, when it was time to circulate, one of our other colleagues introduced the African neurosurgeon to a Polish neurosurgeon sitting on opposite ends of the same round table. An hour later, they could be seen still deep in a highly animated conversation. Sometimes, all that's necessary to start meaningful conversations and relationships is simply putting people together. As you'll discover in this audiobook, that's a huge part of being good at building connections through networking. You simply help others build their connections, and is actually a perfect strategy for introverts who don't usually like to be the centre of attention. So if you tend to be a quiet person, when you attend events, you can easily learn to introduce people properly and take on the role of being an unofficial host or hostess. The example I've just talked about was obviously work-related and took place in a professional setting. But the ethical, sincere and respectful people principles I talk about in this audiobook apply equally to personal and social situations. A few months ago, I was giving a short lecture, again in Turkey, but this time in Istanbul. I told the story I've just told you because the group were responsible for organising very large-scale international events. A senior executive who worked for a large Turkish NGO who was sitting at the front called out, "That's Valentini Amarantidou from Greece. She's my friend. She's amazing." That was interesting for a few reasons. A, it confirmed to the rest of the audience that my story was true. Sadly, so many speakers make up their stories. And B, it also illustrated a critically important point about the link between you and what your connections are prepared to say about you to their colleagues and contacts. A great reputation spreads throughout your network. A large network of contacts will enhance and amplify your professional reputation when they speak well of you behind your back. That will open future doors of opportunity for you. It's a key reason for being professional and well connected. In Valentini's case, she is well known and very highly respected in her industry, and for good reason. She's learned to make building her network a professional priority. You can benefit in the same way. But a few words of warning too. If you build a large network and you become known for being selfish or untrustworthy and only ever contact people when you want something from them, your bad reputation will spread even more quickly. These days, one of the best ways to undermine your professional reputation is to post unprofessional or inappropriate content on social media. Anyone who shows professional or personal interest in us for whatever reason will almost always check us out on social media these days. There are countless examples from the mainstream media of figures whose careers came to an abrupt end after someone found just one inappropriate post from years before. Recruiters, in particular, scour the social media accounts of possible candidates for high-caliber jobs, especially on LinkedIn. They can't afford to risk their own reputation by putting forward a candidate and then find out further down the line that their client discovers something inappropriate about that candidate. You can't let that ever happen to you. So you must be aware of your social media footprint. If necessary, delete anything you may have posted when you were perhaps a lot younger and less aware of the longer-term consequences of inappropriate, jokey, or irresponsible behaviour. The importance and potential power of your present and future connections cannot, in my view at least, be overstated. It is hugely important, especially if you're just starting out in your career. I've genuinely lost count of the number of much older and more experienced people who attended my lectures on this topic who have said how much they wished they'd learned how to do this stuff 20 years ago. But I'm also very aware that there are all sorts of negative feelings associated with the very concept of networking. For many, networking is perceived as a dirty word, conjuring up images of insincere men and women who work a room, having as many shallow, meaningless, small-talk conversations before moving on to meet someone else who is possibly more useful to them. To them, it's a numbers game. In my opinion, professional or social networking is not about that, and it's not about selling yourself. It's not about how many people you can talk to or pitch your business at a party or a business meeting. Please don't do that. Being professional about networking is about making real-life, meaningful human connections, demonstrating you are someone who is worth knowing. I like to think of networking as meeting friends you haven't met yet. Keep this key point in mind. Meeting just one new high-caliber person has the power to change your life, their life, and the lives of others in both of your networks. And this is important. It's not only about what you and your contacts can do for each other. It's about the power of everyone in each other's networks. In other words, what someone in your network could do to help a contact in their networks. Now, imagine how your future personal life and career can be transformed if you multiply that by hundreds of high-caliber people in your network combined with their respective networks, who, in turn, also know hundreds of other interesting high-caliber people. Professional networking is not transactional in the short term. It's a highly sophisticated, long-term collaborative activity that's based on ethical, high-trust relationships. This is especially valuable in a world where more and more interactions are automated and based on algorithms, not human connections. I believe deeper human connections in business based on trust will become even more important in years to come. So here's a question. What's more important to you, your qualifications or your connections, personally as well as professionally? Think about it for a moment. There are widely differing opinions on this, and for complex reasons. But in the context of work, ask any older, experienced person and they'll invariably admit their connections have probably contributed more to their long-term career success than their initial qualifications. Those qualifications may have got them started, but it was their connections that gave them the majority of their future opportunities. Many people starting out in their careers have it drummed into them from an early age that getting good grades, a good degree from a top university is the only thing that matters. It's all about your intellectual capital. The importance of social capital rarely gets a mention and is hardly ever taught. Why would you even need to be taught these skills in a meritocracy? But what I've learned over the years, working as a visiting lecturer on this topic for various business and medical schools in the UK and Europe, is how social capital is so often viewed negatively. Being well connected is routinely associated with nepotism and favouritism, and the unsavoury aspects of being part of an old boys club where the best jobs were handed out to the undeserving children of the good and great, invariably the boys, not the girls. Those born with a silver spoon in their mouths are quietly moved to the front of the employment queue. The rest of us get what's left over. This still happens, of course, but nothing like it used to in the past. Today, large-scale employers especially must be seen to have robust recruitment and diversity policies to show they employ the best qualified people regardless of social class, race, colour or sexual orientation, and rightly so. In our increasingly automated world, I feel really sorry for new job seekers who are forced to apply for jobs online without any human intervention. Algorithms now make so many initial recruitment decisions before they ever get to meet a human. It's become rather soulless. But I'm convinced the pendulum is starting to swing back towards a more human approach. Take internships as an example. Internships provide invaluable work experience for millions of young people all over the world. Did you ever benefit from an internship? How did it come about? It's highly probable that it happened because of a personal recommendation, invariably through a connection by one of your parents, or through a connection by another parent. Parents routinely tap into their family, social and professional networks to find contacts who can offer internships or work experience for their children or the children of other parents they know. Often, those they've got to know through attending school, sports or social events. Parent-teacher associations actively seek out and nurture relationships with influential and successful parents too, even if it's just to secure higher quality raffle prizes for their fundraisers. Parents are often highly proactive in building their school networks with teachers and other parents. And as students, those we grow up with through school, sport, college and university are an incredibly important foundation for a future network. But what I've found is that most children and young people who benefit in this way don't really appreciate the true importance of these networks at the time. Did you? Or did you choose to dismiss it for whatever reasons? But it's how things work, yet there's still a stigma around being well connected. A very long time ago, I told the following networking story, in all innocence, at a conference for senior managers at Tower Hamlets Council, one of the largest councils in London. If at any time you start thinking, what has this got to do with you, all will be revealed. This is the story. I was very depressed, so I went home to my parents in Pembrokeshire in West Wales. My mother asked what the problem was, and I told her I'd literally written hundreds of letters to radio and TV stations applying for work because I so wanted to become a professional broadcaster. But hardly anybody even replied. I had gotten nowhere, and I was at a loss to know what to do next. She instantly said, "You need to speak to my cousin Phil." I said, "Who's your cousin Phil?" "Phil Lewis. He's a director at the BBC in Cardiff." I was shocked and said, "Why didn't you ever tell me about him?" She said, "You never asked." Who would have thought that my own mother would have been able to make an important introduction for me? She duly contacted her cousin Phil, who was delighted to meet up and show me around the BBC. Seeing the radio and TV studios was incredible for me, and after the tour he said, "Come with me." He popped his head inside a door and asked if Dewi was in. His PA Val said he was on the phone, but suggested we hang on for a moment. When he came off the phone, Phil and I were invited into the office of Dewi Smith, a senior producer at BBC Radio Wales. Phil explained that he was showing me around and how I was keen to work in broadcasting. It was a polite conversation. I didn't think much about it. But about 3 weeks later, I got a call on a Thursday afternoon from Jack King, a producer at Radio Wales. He'd been given my number by Dewi Smith. Jack explained that he needed a presenter for the Saturday breakfast show and was wondering if I'd be interested in attending an audition. Would I? I instantly agreed, of course. The next Monday evening, we met and went into a radio studio where I did my audition. I was a nervous wreck, but the next day he called to say the job was mine and could I start that Saturday. That connection was how I got started at the BBC. When I finished the story, someone in the council audience said, "I'm not impressed that you seem to think blatant nepotism is an acceptable way to get a job." I was shocked. It completely threw me, and I struggled with the rest of the session, which was normally very well received by audiences all over the world. It took me quite a while to realise why we both had made wrong assumptions. He was a long-term employee and saw work through a particular lens, and I also heard that he had a reputation for being rather unpleasant with colleagues. But what he didn't realise or want to realise, and what I hadn't thought to mention, was the fact that the connection didn't get me a job. It was a gig. I was just a freelancer with no employee rights or benefits. As someone who's now been freelance for over 45 years, that is almost entirely how you get gigs. The combination of your reputation and your connections and what they're prepared to say about you to reassure potential clients that you are the person they need to be talking to is so incredibly important. So, how is this relevant to you, especially if you're a salaried employee? There was a time when full-time jobs were more secure than freelancing, but not anymore. Hundreds of thousands of people are routinely made redundant in countless industry sectors all the time. If you were one of those casualties, what would you do? What is your backup plan? Those who are better connected than you will have a competitive advantage in the future job market. It will be their networks that will provide them with market intelligence about who's hiring. Large corporations are legally required to advertise new jobs, but globally those are shrinking while smaller companies are growing in number, and they will often find new hires through connections. Indeed, many companies actively encourage their existing staff to recommend suitable candidates for new positions. Some are even paid bonuses for helping them find suitable candidates rather than hiring recruitment agencies. I have trained thousands of recruitment professionals who put huge energy into becoming ultra well connected among clients as well as on the talent side. Their entire business is reliant on their connections. And this also has to be said. A major trend in the world of work is the move towards the gig economy, hiring people on a project-by-project basis as consultants, contractors, and freelancers. Therefore, there's a strong possibility that one day you will choose, or possibly you'll be forced into self-employment, maybe only for a short time, but possibly for longer. The gig economy has become the single biggest shift in the world of work in recent years. There has and continues to be a huge growth in the hiring of independent freelancers, consultants, and contractors. There are now so many online platforms full of people, often in countries where salaries are lower and are prepared to undercut their online competitors. The most successful and most trusted professionals who command the highest fees are always the best connected. It's the people in their networks who alert them to most of their new business. Speaking as someone who's been a full-time freelancer for more than 40 years, I can tell you that independent freelancers and consultants are hardly ever hired as part of any formal recruitment process. During the entire time I've been freelance, I cannot recall even one instance in which I've ever applied for a job. I don't even have a CV or resume. My entire career for decades has been based on my direct and indirect connections, people I know, or people who know people I know. Only yesterday, I received an inquiry to host an international technology conference in Vienna from an organisation in Bratislava, based on a recommendation by the owner of an agency who they're partnering with. I don't have to convince anyone of my expertise. My connection did that for me. All they wanted to know was, am I available on certain dates and what is my fee? Simple. That is how easy this can become for you too when you embrace the concept of building connections from today, not when you believe you have the time. And it's why I'm absolutely committed to the belief that your future network can and will be the most important career insurance policy you can possibly have. That's why this audiobook is about persuading you to make it a lifelong priority to be proactive about creating lots of high-trust, deep relationships with high-caliber individuals from diverse backgrounds and countries in different industries and professions. It's a two-way street. You become a resource to them too, providing them with all manner of opportunities that they would appreciate. As the world embraces artificial intelligence, which will transform our futures in ways that are impossible to predict, it's my passionate belief that humanness and real-life connections will become more important, not less. Technology will play a big role too. In all these years, I must have spoken on this topic to hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and I've also lost count of the number of people who've told me about the positive impact that lecture and my short Meet, Greet and Prosper book has had on their lives, personally as well as professionally. For example, only a month ago, I received an email from the CEO of an asset management company telling me he'd read the book way back in 2002 when it was first published and was writing to ask if it would be possible for his company to license the book so they could distribute branded copies with their company name on the cover free of charge to their contacts. I explained that over the past few decades, quite a few companies in different sectors have done precisely that. I hope it helps you too. Therefore, who you know and who knows you is crucially important to your future career as a professional. This audiobook will help you build and maintain a powerful network of contacts. And when you fully understand how to build a professional network and then become a valued resource to those within your network, your professional life will become easier in the long term. You will attract more opportunities into your own life and open more doors of opportunity for the high caliber people you get to know.